When Chinese hackers can breach America's nuclear weapons agency, and artificial intelligence can fool judges into issuing court orders based on completely fictional legal cases, you have to ask, is anything actually secure anymore? Coming up on Unbreakable Ventures, we examine how the National Nuclear Security Administration, the agency responsible for maintaining America's 5,000 nuclear warheads, fell victim to a sophisticated cyber campaign that's compromised over 400 servers worldwide. Then, we'll examine what might be an even more insidious threat, the first known case where a judge issued a legal ruling based on completely fake case law generated by artificial intelligence. Could this be the beginning of a fundamental paradigm shift in how much we trust the justice system? Welcome to Unbreakable Ventures. I'm Ollie Law, and you are listening to our fortnightly risk update where we dive into emerging and current risks from around the world, focusing on some big stories and some you may have missed. We use the categories from the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report to simplify the threats we're monitoring. But we also do some deep dives and interviews with industry peers. It's Monday the 28th of July and we're covering the world's global threats over the last fortnight. So grab a coffee and let's get into it. What happens when the guardians of America's nuclear arsenal get hacked, when the very agency responsible for maintaining thousands of nuclear warheads becomes the target of foreign cyber operatives? Well, last Friday, Chinese state-sponsored hackers breached the National Nuclear Security Administration using a sophisticated exploit chain targeting Microsoft SharePoint servers. If you're a subscriber of Unbreakable Ventures, you may have seen our breaking news coverage of this on the 21st. Our brief coverage went a little viral on LinkedIn given the seriousness of the situation. The NNSA is a semi-autonomous agency that maintains America's 5,000 nuclear warheads, designs new weapons, and responds to radiological emergencies. They found themselves in the crosshairs of what experts are calling one of the most concerning cyber campaigns of the year. Here's what happened. Chinese hacking groups exploited a zero-day vulnerability known as Tool Shell. As we reported a week back, this is a chained attack that bypasses authentication and allows complete remote control of SharePoint servers. The attackers broke in and stole cryptographic machine keys that let them maintain persistent access, even after systems are patched and rebooted. Think of it like stealing the master key to your house, then making unlimited copies. The good news is that no classified information appears to have been stolen. The NNSA's most sensitive nuclear weapons data sits on air-gapped networks, completely isolated from the internet. But even with this, there are concerning parts to this story. For one, this wasn't an isolated incident. The same vulnerability has compromised over 400 servers worldwide, hitting government agencies, universities, banks, and critical infrastructure across North America, Europe, and Asia. Microsoft has released emergency patches, but the worry is that researchers discovered the attackers had already bypassed Microsoft's earlier fixes for related vulnerabilities. This cat and mouse game shows sophisticated adversaries are systematically reverse engineering patches to weaponize new bypasses before organizations can defend themselves. So, does this threat concern you? We believe organizations that run on-premises SharePoint servers, especially those accessible from the internet, are the primary targets. Unlike SharePoint Online and Microsoft 365, which wasn't affected, self-hosted versions are sitting ducks. Government agencies, healthcare systems, financial institutions, and educational organizations have been prime targets. The disruption risks are severe: complete system takeover, data theft, credential harvesting, and persistent backdoor access that survives standard security measures. Some victims have also been hit with Warlock ransomware after the initial breach. So what can you do right now to get on top of this crisis? First, our team would recommend applying Microsoft's emergency patches for SharePoint Server 2016, 2019 and Subscription Edition. Second, rotate your ASP.NET machine keys before and after patching. This invalidates any stolen cryptographic keys. Third, enable Microsoft's anti-malware scan interface and deploy Defender antivirus on all SharePoint servers. If you can't patch immediately, disconnect vulnerable systems from the internet until you can. Most importantly, check for indicators of compromise. Look for files named spinstall0.aspx in your SharePoint layouts directory. That's the smoking gun of a successful breach. Monitor for unusual PowerShell activity spawning from your web server processes. But if you've found after researching these vulnerabilities with your IT team that there are no concerns, then use this case study in a scenario exercise and play out how your team would have responded. There are always opportunities in a crisis. The nuclear agency breach is a wake-up call. When adversaries can penetrate America's most secure institutions using common enterprise software vulnerabilities, it's time to assume your organization is next. Before we move on to our second threat update, let's look at a few quick fire emerging threats we've picked up throughout the week. These will be noteworthy stories we think you should know about, but less detailed than our 3 core threats analysed, and stories we'll continue to keep an eye on for development. Alaska Airlines grounded its entire fleet for 3 hours last Sunday night due to an IT outage that caused over 150 flight cancellations, including 64 on Monday. The disruption, caused by critical hardware failure at the airline's data centers, affected both Alaska Airlines and Horizon Air, leaving passengers stranded at airports across the country. This is yet more proof that airlines and airports are still vulnerable to software failures. Switzerland's public broadcaster SRF experienced a mysterious website disruption Thursday morning, with error messages linking to a US web development company who have no connection to the broadcaster. While the cause remains unknown and service was quickly restored, the incident raises questions about the security of critical media infrastructure across Europe. This isn't the first time major media outlets have been targeted though. French state television network TV5 Monde was completely taken off air for several hours in April 2015. The attack was later attributed a group calling themselves Fancy Bear, a GRU-affiliated Russian espionage group. These threats perhaps shed further light on how the world is moving away from kinetic-based warfare and to vector-focused, where digital espionage proves more impactful. French air traffic controller strikes in early July disrupted over 1 million travellers, causing around 3,700 daily flight delays and 1,400 cancellations each day. The strikes cost airlines approximately €120 million and affected neighbouring countries including Spain and the UK due to interconnected European airspace, with no resolution in sight for summer travellers. If you're thinking of heading to Europe or have business-related matters there, experts are warning of major disruptions and advising to invest in travel insurance and more flexible airfare and hotel tickets. Starlink's global satellite internet service went down for over 2 hours on Thursday, with customers from the US to Asia reporting complete connection loss. SpaceX blamed the disruption on the failure of key internal software services that operate the core network. They ruled out problems with the satellite constellation itself. This update may raise concerns on single point of failures at SpaceX and raise questions about the risks of putting trust in one internet supplier. Chinese state-backed groups are exploiting the same Microsoft SharePoint vulnerability that hit the US nuclear agency, compromising over 100 organizations globally. Security researchers warn that dozens of organizations should assume their SharePoint servers have been breached since July as attackers steal private keys and intellectual property for espionage purposes. Cyber experts are urgently warning all SharePoint customers with systems run on site to immediately check for breaches. You can read more about this in our July 21st update. Picture this. You're sitting in a courtroom where the judge is about to make a decision that could change your life. The lawyer references a landmark case that seems to perfectly support their argument. The judge nods, impressed by the legal precedent. There's just one problem: that case never existed. It was made up by artificial intelligence. This nightmare scenario just became reality. A Georgia Court of Appeals has vacated what appears to be the first known ruling where a judge sided with someone relying on fake AI-generated case citations to win a legal fight. This is a bizarre but pivotal story, so let me break it down further. In a divorce dispute, the husband's lawyer, Diana Lynch, submitted an order that relied on, quote, 2 fictitious cases. It's what Judge Jeff Watkins called possible hallucinations made up by generative artificial intelligence to deny the wife's petition. The trial judge, following common practice of relying on lawyers to draft orders, rubber-stamped it without catching the fabricated citations. When the wife appealed, Lynch's response doubled down spectacularly. She cited 11 additional cases that were, quote, either hallucinated or irrelevant, and even requested attorney's fees based on one of the new fake cases. It took an appeals court to catch the deception and reverse the decision, but the damage was done. A judicial order had been issued based on completely fictional legal precedent. What makes this case so interesting is what it reveals about the vulnerability of a court system and how they're not keeping up with technological advances. John Browning, a retired Texas Appeals Court Justice and current law professor, is quoted saying it's frighteningly likely that we will see more cases where trial courts unwittingly incorporate bogus citations into judicial orders. The problem is systemic. Overloaded judges increasingly rely on lawyers to draft orders, while AI tools are making it easier for both lawyers and self-represented litigants to file more cases. It's creating a perfect storm of volume and deception. The scope of this crisis is staggering. AI tools have led to a flood of new filings from people who can't afford lawyers, further bogging down already overwhelmed courts. Meanwhile, researchers tracking AI hallucinations in legal filings have documented dozens of cases where major law firms, not just solo practitioners, have been caught submitting fabricated citations. Even Anthropic, the company behind Claude AI, admitted their own lawyers used their AI tool to create inaccurate citations in a copyright lawsuit. But here's the most disturbing part. Only 2 states in the US, Michigan and West Virginia, have moved to require judges to be tech competent when it comes to AI. Most judges have received zero training on spotting AI red flags, leaving them defenseless against increasingly sophisticated deceptions. Despite this being a very American-based threat and all legal systems are different, it's still an emerging, evolving threat that could affect us all at some point. So you should be concerned if you're involved in any legal proceedings, especially family law, civil disputes, or criminal matters where judges maintain heavy dockets and rely on lawyers' proposed orders. The adversarial nature of our legal system, where opposing lawyers typically catch each other's errors, breaks down when both sides might be using unreliable AI tools, or when one party can't afford representation to challenge fabricated citations. The disruption these risks can cause are profound. Wrongful convictions based on non-existent legal standards, divorce settlements decided using fake precedent, and what Judge Watkins called the erosion of trust that could lead litigants to, quote, defy judicial rulings by disingenuously claiming doubt about their authenticity. When people lose faith that court decisions are based on real law, the entire justice system starts to collapse. Here's what needs to happen immediately. Courts must implement mandatory AI competency training for judges, focusing on obvious red flags like case numbers containing ordered numbering or citations mixing up regional court reporters. Legal education programs should teach lawyers to verify every AI-generated citation independently. And we need what researchers call an open, free, centralized repository of case law to make verification easier and faster. Most importantly, if you're involved in legal proceedings, directly ask your attorney about their AI use and verification procedures. Don't assume they're checking their work. Even seasoned lawyers have been sanctioned up to $5,000 for failing to verify AI outputs. Some legal experts are proposing a bounty system where opposing parties receive payments for first reporting fake citations, creating financial incentives for thorough fact-checking. The Georgia case is being remembered as a cautionary tale, but it shouldn't be a one-off warning. As one researcher noted, we're on the verge of massive AI influence in courts, and we need to understand whether AI models are, quote, pushing particular perspectives on legal doctrine across many different cases. The intersection of artificial intelligence and justice can't become a place where fabricated precedent carries the same weight as real law. But without immediate action to educate judges and verify AI outputs, that's exactly the dystopian future we're stumbling toward, one fake citation at a time. That's it for today's update. If you need help navigating these threats or building a plan to protect your business, the same advisors who collate these insights are here to help. Head over to unbreakableventures.com to book a complimentary chat online with one of them. And if you found this resource useful, consider subscribing to Unbreakable Ventures or sharing the article with your network. After all, resilience is about community and communication. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, stay safe.
Unbreakable Ventures is brought to you by the Senior Advisory Team at Fixing, a boutique resilience advisory based in the Oceania, ASEAN and India regions. Special thanks to our sponsor and Europe's leading SaaS provider for resilience software, F24. Our resources are researched and published by industry specialists across New Zealand, Australia, Malaysia and the UK. This podcast provides advice and opinion on disaster recovery and the threat landscape. The content is not a substitute for expert guidance during a crisis. Unbreakable Ventures is trademarked by Fixing Consulting Partners, a Fixing Group company.